Hi, everyone. It's Jen on the go. Welcome back to this channel. We have a very special guest with us today. We have Daniel Feuer, who is an Instacart shopper located in Ontario, Canada. Daniel is working with the Ministry of Labor in Ontario to provide details into the new legislation that their government has proposed. Daniel was featured in the CBC Go Public newscast. Here's a clip of him.
The amount that Instacart pays us has dropped by at least half, and it's not unusual for the batches that we take. The effective earnings are actually less than minimum wage.
Daniel Feuer and others say it's not always clear how much each trip will pay. They want a more transparent breakdown from the company.
If you are interested in these potential benefits for gig workers that may be a little controversial, stay with us because we're getting into all of this right now. Okay, let's go. Hi, Daniel. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on this channel. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with all of us regarding Instacart. Please tell us a little bit about who you are and why this is so important to you.
And thank you very much for inviting me on. I've been an Instacart shopper since May 2020. And like many people, started doing this gig just to help with my income and make sure I can meet my financial obligations. But it's become increasingly more and more important to me to talk to and to stand up to what Instacart has been really systemically doing to shoppers over those last couple of years, which is basically reducing our income to the point where there are many times when you and I are accepting a batch, the amount of money that Instacart is actually paying us tends to be, unfortunately, below minimum wage.
You're talking to all of the Instacart shoppers who are affected by what Instacart has been doing.
The bulk of what's been happening is Instacart, they've been gradually reducing our pay. I think most of us saw this summer last year because, for myself, I'm very fastidious. I mean, I track all my earnings, all my batches, all my times, and actually have little charts that show me these things. And I did notice in some of my metrics that, Instacart has slowly reduced, what they're actually, paying me for the batch. And this was actually reflected in a lot of the online communities. Other people had noticed that. And, just starting to digging around into this more and more, people understood that, okay, yes, they are reducing this. And, what can we do to speak out against it? I know there are people that are, members of the Gig Workers Collective, and they've done work to help advocate and to, speak on our behalf. But bottom line, shoppers really need to, speak up for themselves and organize for themselves locally, not necessarily just at a national or international level, but really 500,000 people each, messaging Instacart saying what's going on with our pay, has a big impact. And at one point, a number of us decided, collectively and also independently, that maybe we should go to the media about this. And there's a very good story here that Instacart is doing this to us, but more importantly, they haven't said a word about reducing our income. And as a matter of fact, they are on record saying we have not changed the amount of money that shoppers are receiving. But again, shoppers, when you are doing this and you are tracking your income, you can really see that time after time and over time that our incomes are just going down to the point where, as I mentioned, we are taking batches where we are effectively making less than minimum wage. And so, in contacting, various media, eventually the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, one of their news segments, Go Public, did get back to myself, and other shoppers were contacted by CBC, about this issue. They decided this was definitely worthy of a story because Instacart is fairly big. Ontario specifically, we are the fifth largest market for Instacart, just after New York State and before Pennsylvania. So it is a very important market. And CBC also realized, well, you have tens of thousands of shoppers just in Ontario that are being impacted by this. And one of the reasons that CBC again had done the segment, and I was rightly or wrongly, a big focus of that was because I was willing to go on the record with my actual name, because it's not to discount anybody else's contribution, because everyone has been providing a lot of good information through you and through the media about what Instacart's been doing. But I thought, what, having a name behind it will definitely give that much extra credibility, because now Instacart, there's a name, there's a face that people can realize, oh, yes, this person is being affected, as opposed to one of the other tens of thousands of shoppers, because it becomes a little bit more anonymous at that point.
Really takes guts on your part, Daniel. So thank you so much. You have been, like you said, on a couple news networks. Has Instacart responded to what you were saying directly about Instacart?
To date, I have never heard anything back from Instacart. I mean, I've gone so far as back in, I think it was October, I actually wrote an open letter to Fujisimo, addressing here are, concerns and thoughts and ideas of, what could be done. And not that I was expecting anything to come of it, but nothing came of it. Same thing with the various news stories and articles. Unfortunately, Instacart has, for whatever reason, right or wrong, has not reached out to myself or any of the other shoppers, which is really unfortunate, because with 500,000 of us, there are some fantastic ideas that I think would be mutually beneficial. It would benefit the shoppers, it could benefit Instacart, and would definitely improve their profile within the community, and also in the greater gig community.
I agree with you. And Fujisimo herself, when she first took on the position of CEO at Instacart, did acknowledge that the shoppers are the backbone, the brand ambassadors, the face of her company, and to just completely dismiss all of the shoppers, I mean, I think it's unconscionable, and I think it's an act of cowardice. She has an opportunity to rise to the occasion and hear the shoppers. And it is because of the fact that Instacart isn't listening and dismissing what is so negligently happening to shoppers that legislation does have to at least investigate this or get involved on some level. What is your response to that?
Oh, I'm definitely in agreement, because Instacart is, I'd like to say doing the minimum, but in a lot of respect, they are not. And so because they are not doing anything, governments are stepping in to say, okay, gig workers are becoming a more and more significant portion of the working force. Again, in Ontario, and I'm sure it's fairly similar in the US and other states, that 15 to 20% of the workforce is comprised of gig workers. And if companies are not going to adhere to the defined labor laws, that companies will find ways of moving through cracks, or finding exceptions, and cater to the lowest amount of money that they can pay out in order for those companies to operate. And nothing against Instacart or other gig companies. Absolutely, they are in business to make a profit. However, governments provide a counterbalance, because you can't pay someone 2 cents an hour for doing work. Not to say that Instacart is, but because Instacart there's nothing stopping Instacart from paying a minimum wage for their engaged time or better batch pay. But because they're not doing that, governments in North America are stepping in. California, the end of 2020, and now the Ontario government, with their proposed legislation, is doing the same, not just for Instacart, but for gig workers in general. When you were speaking, about Fujisimo, and acknowledging that yes, she has stated that the shoppers are the backbone. It was I'm a big fan of podcasts. I very much like Reid Hoffman's Master of Scale, and Fujisimo was featured on that a number of months ago. And yes, she did acknowledge how important shoppers were. But it made probably about this much of that the conversation, which is okay. I mean, it was a bigger conversation, but the way that the shoppers were acknowledged, it really did not do service to what the 500,000 strong workforce does for Instacart.
And Daniel, I think the issue here is this is not a living wage. And I've said this before on other videos, but everyone that works, whether you are working on gig apps or a W-2 job, deserve a wage with dignity. And these payouts from these gig apps, especially Instacart, and that's what I'm focusing on, it is exploitative. These batch payments, and I know it's not like this in every market, in every area, but the majority of Instacart shoppers really are struggling with these batch payments. And for me, it's like, how is Instacart morally getting away with this? And yes, it's very easy to say, hey, if you're not happy, just don't take the batch. It's that simple. But it is a morality issue. This shouldn't even be happening to begin with. Yesterday, I put a batch on my community post. It was $5. It was a deliver only batch, I believe, but it was going 5 miles with no tip. With the cost of gas, This is insanity. At this point, you are paying Instacart to shop for them. And it's just, I just want to see that stop.
What they're paying in terms of the batch payments. The word that I used during the interview with the CBC was disgusting. And that really, it really is. And for me, it was one of the reasons why it was so important for me to, track my earnings. So I know when I do go out, how much I can expect to make. And it had been consistently, dripping below that minimum wage equivalent. You have to work. You have to, be able to provide for your family. But on the flip side, just because you need to provide for your family doesn't mean that companies shouldn't be paying workers in a responsible living wage type manner. There's nothing stopping from Instacart or any other gig company to provide extra payments, which is one of the reasons that a lot of people had lobbied the government. Individual people has said, this is unacceptable. It is something needs to change. The gig workers, while people can argue, should they be employees? Should they be independent contractors? How they're classified. In the meantime, companies are taking advantage of the fact that, okay, we can wiggle between this and not have to adhere to, for example, minimum wage laws. Well, the government of Ontario has listened to a lot of the gig workers and has said, you know what? If you're working for one of these platforms, we're not going to change the classification of gig worker, contract worker, full-time employee, or just employee in general. We are going to make the gig companies make sure that the workers get, at least a minimum wage. And this is not including, again, travel, any reimbursements, any tips. It's just the amount of money that the gig companies pay has to work out to be the equivalent of minimum wage.
So Daniel, what I'm hearing you say is you're not advocating for minimum wage. You're advocating for a minimum wage of $15 an hour minimum.
Yeah. So basically what I'm saying, it is a floor, a price where, okay, Instacart, the effective payment cannot be less than $15 an hour. If you had a $7 batch, and if it's going 2.5 kilometers, in Canada, they reimburse us 40 cents per kilometer. So that would work out for $1. And so really the batch payment is $6. And I'm not including tips because tips aren't part of the equation. If that batch, if I get that batch done in 20 minutes, okay, my effective earnings would be $18 an hour. So 6 times 3. If that batch now takes me an hour, well, I was only making $6 an hour, Instacart would be obligated to top up my earnings by $9. And that's how you get to that effective minimum floor level. And that's one part of the proposed legislation. There are other benefits, but the $15 an hour one is the most demonstrative one that would provide that immediate benefit to gig workers.
In addition to the $15 an hour minimum at the base level, what are the other 5 major pieces included in this legislation in Ontario?
So aside from the minimum wage is the right to keep the tips, a 2 weeks notice for termination, the right to resolve any work related disputes within Ontario. So just for those shoppers based in Ontario or those gig workers based in Ontario, and then protection from reprisals if they assert their rights. But the other big portion that I think will have a lot of long-term and lasting benefits, it's called the right to information. So there are 2 major points in there. One is the pay calculation. So right now, when we get a batch, you get basically your pay is made out of 3 things: distance reimbursement, tip, and the batch pay. The batch pay, as most people know, trying to figure out the rhyme or reason of how they come up with $7 for this one and $7.50 for this one, and they might have more or less items in the batch. It's insane. No one can figure that out. But the legislation seeks to address that by getting a detailed calculation. So that's the intent, is to provide not just a little bit more information, but a lot more information. So you and I, theoretically, if we knew, how many items and the classification of those items, theoretically, we should be able to take a look at any batch and then figure out exactly what that batch payment would be.
I've had a lot of Instacart shoppers as of late say to me, either they've been deactivated for asking for heavy pay when it was owed to them, or some people had to have heavy pay and then questioned chat support, who then got angry with them and shut them down and turned off their Marqeta card as a form of punishment for questioning them. So it's just all over the place. And like you said, this would solve the transparency issue. These are just shoppers who want to know, hey, I lifted 20 cases of water from Costco. I just want to know why I didn't get heavy pay, but now they're getting shut down. So there's no mode of communication at all. Then at least be transparent. So there's no way to do that. So legislation steps in and requires them to be transparent. And again, this is a dignity, this is a morality issue. You are allowed to know what you should be paid for lifting 20 cases of water up 4 flights of stairs. It's infuriating.
I'll reverse this from the point of a customer. When you are adding things to a cart that eventually Instacart will be fulfilling in one of the shoppers, you will see exactly what those costs are. It gets added in. So if you add in, heavy items, if you're adding in bigger, boxes of diapers, generally speaking, the cost for that delivery will go up. So obviously, Instacart, has a formula. They know how to charge that to customers.
Right.
The flip should be that as a shopper, maybe if it's after the batch has been completed, they have up to 24 hours in the proposed legislation to provide us that breakdown of how the pay was calculated. The other portion of that, and it affects 2 things. One is on the rating system. The rating systems, as Instacart has told us, is what they use to judge shoppers and provide us batches. Now, you and I know, and everyone else could probably figure out, that's not the only factors that Instacart uses. They have said to us that, okay, if you're closer to a store, theoretically, you will get batches presented to you before other people. So tied into that rating systems is what the legislation calls work assignments. So a batch is, for proposed, is a work assignment. And Instacart would be forced, and other good companies would be forced to tell shoppers, okay, why, and I'm just really paraphrasing here, helping me understand why you would receive a batch before I would. This goes to the algorithm that people talk about, or the black box. And while there is absolutely no expectation that Instacart would let us see under the hood, because this is proprietary information. They, again, have a right to figure out how they want to do their business, a right to make a profit. But the best analogy I can think of is if I go into the grocery store and there's, I like Dave's Killer Bread, for example, and I don't expect that company ever to provide me the recipe, because that would just ruin their business. People could make it their own knockoffs and whatnot. So the recipe is the algorithm. However, when I do go into that store, I can pick up that bag of bread and look and see, here are the ingredients, from the biggest part of the ingredients all the way down to the least important ingredient. Instacart and the other gig companies can do the equivalent, is say, okay, here are the different factors that make up the algorithm and why people will see batches. And here is the order, which ones are more important. They're not giving away the formula. They're not ruining their business model. But now me as a shopper, I can see, and I'll just make this one up. Let's say, for example, because we scan the items when they go into the app. I'll say that I'm going to look for the Campbell's low sodium tomato soup. I accidentally pick up the wrong can. It's the regular tomato soup, doesn't get scanned. I now realize, oops, made a mistake. I scanned the low sodium version. Maybe Instacart tracks accuracy. We don't know, but let's say they do track accuracy, and maybe that's one of the ingredients in that recipe. And so now as a shopper, I can see, that's a really important higher end ingredient. Maybe it's more important than how quickly I shop for a batch. That means, okay, I will focus more of my efforts on improving my scanning and making sure I double check, oh yes, that is the soup can that I'm looking for. So having that transparency for the algorithm and for the pay calculation and the rating system, I think it's one of the huge things that will definitely make a big improvement for shoppers.
Completely agree with you. Knowledge is power, and a true independent contractor would be able to have this at least candid, transparent information. And this is something we don't have. We don't belong anywhere. We're not true independent contractors, and we don't really want to be employees. We're in this place where Instacart is getting away with not providing this transparency. As you already know, the veteran Instacart shoppers are really struggling. They're really frustrated because here they have been working on the app since 2017, 2018. Through the pandemic, when it was unsafe to really shop at that point, new shoppers are being prioritized. And it's really not right that these veteran shoppers have to suffer in the way they do, which is causing immense frustration to shoppers in the US. I don't know what's happening in Canada. I do have a lot of Canadian Instacart shoppers that watch this channel who do reach out to me, but it is the veteran shoppers who seem to be the ones that are getting slighted with this no transparency. The new shoppers are being rewarded, veteran shoppers out. So this transparency would help. I mean, really, how do shoppers get the batches? Don't we as independent contractors, if we're true independent contractors, shouldn't we be able to have that information?
Exactly, and I agree. Information is power, and right now Instacart, holds all that power because they are sharing, next to nothing. People have kind of started figuring out some of the elements that make up this algorithm, so they are, trying to make their lot better. But that's not the way it really should be. Like I said, as an independent contractor, I should have a lot more information in order for me to decide, okay, yes, I'm going to take that batch. But more importantly, if with the current Instacart system, I want to know what elements impact my ability to see the batches, because you and I know, and everyone else knows, not everybody sees the same batches at the same time. And again, if they were to kind of lift that veil a little bit, and the legislation says, okay, you got to tell us, and I'll make it up again, the ingredients that make up the algorithm, it gives everybody a fighting chance. Instacart doesn't have to change the algorithm, but at least I know, okay, yes, speed is a very big thing. I've been really slow lately. Okay, yeah, that's probably why one of the factors. And again, for myself, I'm very fastidious. I'm tracking everything on my Instacart, from when I start the batch, when I stop it, how many items per second, when I check out, the distance, like everything. I keep track of that, because since Instacart is not providing me any of that information, I need to do that myself. And for me to try to figure out what's important, that we have a local group here in the region that I'm in. So I'm just outside of Toronto in an area called Durham, the Durham region. And we have a small group, and we chat online. And we have independently figured out for ourselves, if we have 3 people sitting, in the parking lot, we can have our phones and we can see if we're all 5-star, people are not receiving the same batches at the same time. And even, virtually, we do the same thing. Many times we have found that if I receive a batch or someone else receives a batch before me, very often it's a previous customer who has rated that shopper 5-star. So there's, one of the elements that we do know. And we're trying to figure these things out for ourselves, but it's very frustrating, and it's not our job. Our job as Instacart shoppers is to pick a batch, shop, bag, deliver. We don't want to be data scientists or anything like that. We want to be able to provide for our families, do our jobs, and should Instacart give us better tools, that's just going to make us better shoppers.
There are a lot of people that don't want government involved at all. In fact, they say the bigger the government, the bigger the problems on these apps. Stop messing with them, leave them alone. They're just fine. What do you have to say about the controversial side of this, of asking for more legislation? What is the downside? And what do you say to people who are saying, don't regulate me, please? I like it just how it is.
Instacart and the other gig companies, there's nothing preventing them from giving the gig workers better wages. Instacart has the right to make a profit. They have a right to do their business, conduct their business the way they see fit, so long as it's within the confines of the law. But there's enough people out there that seeing that something is not right. Something is not right with the system. And just because the government is now going to come in, at least for Ontario, and legislate, again, that floor pricing, that's not going to stop people who know how to work the system, who are very effective, very great communicators, great shoppers, 5-stars all around. It'll not stop them from making whatever they're making. It's just going to protect probably that 80% of the people out there that aren't, the necessarily the top tier, or aren't always in the top tier, helping the vast majority of those shoppers that just want to do it, go in, shop, come out, and be able to provide for their family. So for those people that I say that they don't want to get the government involved, then I think it'd be the responsibility of the shoppers for them to get involved and advocate for themselves and for other shoppers to Instacart. Say, hey, listen, I'm doing really well with this. I think other shoppers should be doing really well with this. How, Instacart, are you going to change your platform to allow everybody to do well, or at the very least, not to be earning a effective below minimum wage?
A wage with dignity. Daniel, this model of work is spreading. And if we don't nip this in the bud now, these gig apps will continue. Instacart will continue to take advantage of their shoppers. And that is exactly what is happening. So it's just, thinking downstream and not in today. And just because you might be one of these Instacart shoppers in your market that might be making $100, $200, $300 a day, that is amazing. We are so happy for you, but we're looking for the greater good downstream. If these apps are doing this now, what is going to happen in another 6 months?
Oh, exactly. You hit the nail on the head. Just because someone's making good money now does not necessarily guarantee they'll be making good money in the future. And you and I know that you can have issues dealing with customer support. Getting a hold of customer support has become increasingly challenging. It's not uncommon for customer service agents to seek retribution against shoppers, so deactivating them. But the legislation, helps with those kind of things. And I know so many people that have had issues with support and are concerned about reprisals, because support agents have said, well, okay, no, I can't remove a 1-star, 2-star, whatever. I can deactivate you.
I've been receiving emails from shoppers saying, will you please talk about this? It is happening from chat support on the rise. So you dare cross them. They are admittedly saying in the chats, I can make your life a living hell and take you off this platform. And the fact that that is happening on Instacart is another issue in itself that should not be allowed. These are Instacart shoppers out there serving their customers, seeking help and being threatened with deactivation if they're challenging or questioning what is possibly owed to them, or just asking for help from chat support. So I am going to make a video about that, because that is not okay, but that is a whole other issue.
Oh, and some of that is being addressed with the proposed legislation, in the sense that if you're going to be kicked off the platform for more than a 24-hour notice, if you're going to be kicked off for the platform for more than 24 hours, the gig company must give you 2 weeks notice. So that effectively, if that kind of threat from support, it won't hold up. And if it does happen, okay, great. Then there are means as part of the legislation to go to court, have that court case in Ontario. You don't have to travel to the States or wherever. You can have that looked at here. So it's one of those tools that, even though the legislation is confined to Ontario, Instacart as a whole has unified processes. And so something like that could theoretically actually benefit not just Ontario, but everybody else, because it's a chat support agent won't necessarily threaten someone from this region or this region, not knowing, okay, well, could there be any reprisals against me? It's a little bit selfish, but those workers can also protect themselves by, first, they shouldn't be threatening shoppers, but should they do that, there's protection for shoppers, for gig workers, giving you a 2-week notice. You are required to get 2 weeks notice. And the legislation does say, yes, if there is cause. So if you were using your Instacart card to try to pay for your own personal stuff repeatedly, okay, that's a legitimate deactivation. But if Instacart has to give you 2 weeks notice in Ontario.
So these regulations are there to help shoppers, not to hurt them, not to make them employees, not to take away their controls and their freedom and flexibility. We all know that we are tightly controlled by these gig apps. And the only flexibility and freedom we really have is to turn the app on or off. But once you are on their platform, it is their rules, and that's fine. But let's just call it what it is.
Agreed. And like you were saying before, the legislation is not trying to define what a gig worker is. It's like, that's something that maybe will be defined at some other time, but at least right now, let's deal with the big issues concerning all gig workers, which were those 6 items: a living wage and being treated with respect, because these companies, and I'll stick with Instacart, I think for the most part is not really providing that kind of leadership and they could be. Government is coming in to say, hey, if you're not going to provide the leadership, we will give you some directions.
Personal question. Why is this so important to you? Why be bothered? Why are you advocating like you are?
I just really don't like seeing people taking advantage of. I really just don't like seeing people being pushed around. And Instacart, I think it's a fantastic idea. A lot of these gig platforms are fantastic ideas. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't necessarily give them the right to, again, we'll stick with Instacart, treating shoppers so poorly. There's 500,000 of us. We do not deserve to be treated like this. And I've talked to other people that they are really hurting because of this. And it's not just, with the gas price and the economics of it, it's the way that Instacart treats us. I would spend, I don't know how many hours, a week chatting with support to get additional information that, frankly, I shouldn't have to ask for. If there's a way I can help people collectively and everybody coming together to also help, but if I can somehow help better the platform, and regardless of how that help happens, right now it happens to be with working with the Ontario Ministry of Labor and with their proposed legislation. If Fiji CMO called me today, I would be more than happy to pick up that call and have a discussion with her with some fantastic ideas that, for myself and other people, that I think would improve the platform, still allow them to make a profit, do their IPO, but bottom line, to really put those shoppers that Fiji had mentioned that are the backbone. Well, okay, yes, we are the backbone. Recognize that. Don't treat us badly. Don't make us slouch. Speaking with the backbone analogy, help us stand, proud and tall by giving us minimum standards, and making us a better workforce, making Instacart a better company.
Absolutely. And Daniel, you said it so beautifully. And for me, and for a lot of other shoppers who are watching us, there's a moral concern here. And I know a lot of people will say again, and I know I sound like a broken record, just walk away. My God, who cares? Go to DoorDash, go to Uber Eats. This is a moral concern, and it's not going to stop if people like you don't stand up and try to make it stop. And like you said, you're not pushing for people to lose their independent contractor status. You're just pushing to help legislation give gig workers, give Instacart shoppers the bare minimum of what they are owed. Because right now, again, with the cost of gas, we aren't making minimum wage here, and everybody should be making at least minimum wage. I don't understand the pushback when it comes to this. We're not fighting for people to not be independent contractors. You are fighting for what is good, what is right, what is moral, and what Instacart is doing, how they are deactivating shoppers, how they are allowing customers to commit fraud, how they are not transparent with the ratings, how they are dropping the batch prices. It's just not okay. And we're not saying don't make a profit. It is your business, do what you want, but
exactly.
Treat your shoppers, your backbone, your brand ambassadors, the frontline workers of your company that brought you to that multi-billion-dollar status with a little more respect. That's all we want. Respect.
I have the right to make a profit. Me as a shopper, I have the right to be able to support my family, to be able to put food on the table, gas in the car. And if Instacart isn't going to do that, well, yes, you're right. I can go to other platforms if it's sticking with the gig economy. Okay, but you're subjected to the same constraints, the same concerns, the same issue. And actually, one thing you did touch upon, the gas prices, ridiculous. Right now, for Instacart, you get a reimbursement from the distance from the store to the last customer. If I travel for another company, or if I have more well-defined as a traditional independent contractor, yes, I will bill them 55 cents per kilometer travel. Right now, because the gas prices have gone up incredibly, many travel companies, many courier companies, they will implement a surcharge to cover that. We're seeing batches that are requiring us to go further and further away. I saw one today for, I think it was 40 kilometers, and that's not including my distance to the store. Big difference.
We are definitely losing money on these batches at this point. And again, we are hoping shoppers will not take these batches, but in the meantime, they are. And this is why we are asking Instacart to step up. And if they won't step up, then perhaps legislation can get them to do so. What is next for your advocacy for Instacart shoppers, Daniel? And what would you like to personally say to the Instacart shoppers who are watching you today?
As much as you can, if the batches don't make sense to you, don't take them. Unfortunately, the way the system is set up, there will always be people that will take those batches. However, as you know, that the longer they sit on the platform, the more of a boost Instacart will give. So, my hope is, take the batches that make sense to you, that help you make a living. I would encourage shoppers, tons of Facebook groups, but more importantly, even having your own local community group, because the group that I have, it's a Telegram group. There's about 40 of us. It helps us in more ways that cannot be satisfied by a gig worker collective or a Facebook group. We get together for holiday parties, for a pint every once in a while. So I would encourage shoppers to reach out to the other shoppers and say, hey, is there a local group? Or hey, start one. More importantly, I do have a website that I have been did set up to keep people aware of the advocacy. There's also a number of tools that I'm finishing up to allow shoppers to keep track of their earnings. There's a very nice Excel spreadsheet that has a number of metrics and graphs, and making a fairly easy to use system like that, because it's really you need to be an advocate for yourself. At the very minimum, it's fantastic if they do have the time to keep track of just the basic information about their batches, and that way you yourself can also see, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm not necessarily making as much as I thought, or there's not enough money in.
Daniel, what is the name of your website? I'm going to put that right here. And you guys, I'm also going to link Daniel's website in the description box below. And Daniel, if we wanted to look at your Excel spreadsheets, where would we find those? On your website, or will you link those separately? Or can we put those in the description box?
Thatdaniel.com. So ThatDaniel.com. Sign up for the newsletter when I have the spreadsheet completed. By all means, it'll be available for download. There's no charge. I have a user guide that I'll be creating to go along with that. And again, just to encourage people to take action, keep track of things for themselves. The newsletter will also inform them of what's going on in Canada, but also in the greater gig economy, more specific to Instacart.
Are they able to email you as well, or can they find you through the website?
Absolutely. There's the email on the website. Yeah, so you can either contact me directly through the website. There's a form, or you can email.
Perfect. And you guys, again, I'm going to put all of that information in the description box below, so you have it. Will you please come back and keep us posted to let us know how the legislation is going in Ontario, because it would definitely be applicable for shoppers in the United States.
Oh, absolutely. I will definitely keep you guys updated. And also for those people that do believe that this is a solution, take a look at the legislation, and there'll be links on the thatdaniel.com website. Good. And figure out, okay, what could be useful. Should there be other people that want to step up and talk to their local, state, or federal representatives as an example of, okay, is this something that could be applicable to us, and then right size it and whatever other specifics there are for your area that the legislation could address. Make it for your area. And I would definitely encourage people to contact a local representative to see about, again, making improvements, because if Instacart isn't, other people, other shoppers, other governments will step in and do so.
And if you think your voice doesn't matter, it actually really does.
You don't know until you actually step out of your comfort zone. This was definitely something stepping out of my comfort zone, but it's something I felt passionate enough that suck it up, and talk to the media, post in the Facebook group, reach out and speak with you.
Anyone who would like to advocate on behalf of Instacart shoppers are welcome here, because there is so much power in our voices. There really is. Well, I know you are an Instacart shopper and you do this as your side gig, but what else do you do for revenue? Tell me about you and personally what you do to make money.
Certainly. You might have noticed I'm coming from a fairly messy basement, and there's a reason for that. There's a reason for the curtains behind me. there's a laser cutter somewhere back there. I do run a cufflink company. Makes interchangeable cufflinks. So kind of think, Pandora, but for cufflinks. The cufflinks, come apart. You have these little interchangeable elements. Use the laser cutter to cut that. You could imagine that at the start of the pandemic, a lot of people working from home and no social events. Cufflinks were not the biggest priority for people, but did a little pivot, and I started to make RFID protected wallets. This one's made out of leather. I also have ones that are made out of wood.
Daniel, I didn't even know you had a company. I'm going to link that below. Do you have a lot of things on your website in addition to your cufflinks, which do you have a copy I can see real quick?
Oh, yeah. So I'm wearing these ones. This is the a provincial flower of Ontario. It's called a trillium. But because people weren't really buying a lot of cufflinks, did that pivot.
Love the quality. I love supporting another artist. So that is amazing. I didn't even know that you did art on the side. That's great, Daniel. So you do that, and you do Instacart very minimally at this point, because you really can't, because you would be making below minimum wage, and that's not an option.
Yeah. And, I want to be able to meet my financial obligations to myself, my family. And unfortunately, Instacart does not allow me to do that as much as I wanted to before.
Well, I'm really proud of you for this work, because it's not easy. And I'm sure you get a lot of banter and a lot of people that again are saying, why are you doing this? But all that matters is why you are doing this. So again, on behalf of me and other Instacart shoppers, we really do personally, truly thank you for your advocacy, because it's not easy. For all of you that are watching, please let us know in the comment section below what you think about this legislation that is happening in Ontario. You think it would be applicable to what can happen for Instacart shoppers here? We want to hear from you, your opinion. Even if you don't agree, that's fine. But I think what we can agree on is that Instacart needs to do better in taking care of their frontline workers. It's that simple. Because, Daniel, why?
Because if Instacart doesn't step up and doesn't do better and do right by their shoppers, then governments will continue stepping in and providing legislation that Instacart, instead of being a follower and following the government legislation, they should get ahead of this. They should be leaders. They should be the ones to say, you know what? If I'm going to work for a gig company, I want to work for Instacart because they provide better this, better that. And if they're not going to do it, shoppers are not going to want to work for them. And Instacart will have an increasingly difficult time because most people will not want to work for less than minimum wage.
Thank you again so much for taking the time to chat with us today. Again, if you guys want to get in touch with Daniel, he is an amazing person. Such a smart, funny, and kind human being. He is very accessible. So again, I will put all of his information below, and check out his website too. I can't wait to do that.
Jen, I just want to say, thank you for all the work that you are doing and being an advocate. You're also a beacon that I think is shining a light on a lot of things that Instacart doesn't want to acknowledge. And again, I appreciate you being there for us as well.
That was so kind of you to say, Daniel. I truly believe that we can move a mountain together. Daniel, I can't wait to have you back. Please come back as soon as you can, because you were a delight to talk with.
More than willing to do so. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. And again, if you could please comment in the comment section below. I'm sure Daniel will also be reading and responding back to the comments. I love you all, and I will see you in the next video.